The most important thing is a pub date, and you'd be surprised how many people are unsure. They say, oh, I think it's coming out in May, but it's so important for me to know that information so that I can plan out your campaign and what I can do for you. It's very different how I would approach your book publicity if your book is launching next month as opposed to 6 months from now. It would be a completely different job for me. It's really important to pin down a pub date. And if you have no idea, that's fine. I've also helped authors talk them through it. We've done strategy sessions and I help them pick their pub date strategically, the one that makes the most sense, that will allow them to gain the most publicity from the book launch. But you really want to have a firm date. It is important. A lot of people ask me, who cares? And I say, I do. It's more important than you realize. So if you don't have a pub date, it's okay, but then we need to work together to set one in stone, because then I backtrack from there, all of my efforts.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I get to talk to so many great guests coming on my show, and one of the big things that's a struggle for new podcasters and people who host a podcast like I do is finding guests. And when you find someone who can help you, great guests on your podcast, and can open the doors to introducing you to great people, you are so grateful. And I am grateful because Catherine's here. I know her as Kat, but Catherine's here on the podcast to talk about what she does to help authors and so many others get their voice out into the world. We work together and we know each other through email, but now I get to see Kat on my screen, which makes me happy. And I hear from authors that this is one of the best people in the business to work with. So Kat, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Your guests, the people you represent, they go on and on about you. There's so much love that they have for you and what you do and how you treat them. So I want you to know that on behalf of all the great people you've sent me. They speak so highly of you. So whatever you're doing in your magic secret sauce, you're doing it well. So good job.
Thank you so much.
It's exciting. Tell us about your website, Kat, and a little bit more about you.
Sure, yeah. So like you said, my name's Catherine, Kat for short, Kennedy. My website is ckpublicity.com. So it's a publicity services website, and my clients are authors. So if you are writing a book or planning on writing a book, go ahead and check it out. What I do is I'm very straightforward and transparent with both my services and my pricing. So you're not going to have to jump through a lot of hoops to figure out what I'm doing and how much it's going to cost you. So you just type in ckpublicity.com. All the info's there right up front. I'm not hiding anything, no hidden fees. And if it sounds like we might be a match and you think I can help you out, then you just fill out the contact form and press send, and I'll get back to you right away.
Great. Super easy. I love that. How do you find authors to bring into your stable of amazing guests? Are people just reaching out to you? Are you searching for authors? How does that work?
Both. A lot of it is word of mouth through previous clients or previous colleagues that I worked with, people that just know me on a personal level and say, hey, this person's writing a book. Can I give them your name? That type of thing. So I get a lot of those type of word of mouth referrals. And then I get a decent amount through the contact form on my website, like I mentioned. And then I actually sometimes get other publicity agencies that are at capacity and they say, you know what, I can't take on another author. Would you mind? And so then I take on some of their clients. So a variety of ways, actually.
How did this all start for you?
Oh, well, I knew that's what I wanted to do a long time ago. So I actually went to college to study PR, started as an intern while still in college, and I'm still going. So it's been my entire career path. I've never veered from it. It's just something I really enjoy. And so it just right out of the bat from school, it's what I've always done.
Well, there you go. So there you got lots of experience behind you as well. I love that.
Yes.
We talked before we hit record, having guests come on my show. Again, everyone you've sent me are superstars. I love them all. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're looking for in a podcast as far as sending your clients towards a podcast? What kind of research are you doing about podcasts? What kind of back end work do you do before you say, hey, author, I'd love for you to go on the blah, blah, blah podcast? What kind of work do you do behind the scenes for that?
Sure. Yes, there's definitely research that goes into it. Unfortunately, a lot of podcasts go off the air. So it could be something that was excellent last year and they're no longer recording. So step one is always to see that they're still in business and how often they're recording. Make sure it's not in a hiatus. You can go and check their recent episodes. And if there's a giant gap, to me, that's a red flag. If there hasn't been a new episode since 2021, for example. And then you want to look, obviously, at the episodes, listen to a few, read the descriptions, and make sure it's a fit, because I would never want to put my clients in a position where they don't know what to say. They don't have the answers to the questions they're being asked. I want them to be the expert that can give away their knowledge, not feel at a loss or feel like it's not a fit and it's not the right arena for them.
Okay. What tools are you using to find these podcasts?
So publicists have access to different software. Like there's things called Muck Rack and Cision and things like that, which is essentially like a Yellow Pages for the media. Some of them have podcasts. A lot of them don't. So publicists do lots of different things. You can pay for lists or different services that will send me a list of podcasts and the hosts and the contact information. Or you could do a little more legwork, which is what I tend to do because I prefer to do my own research and digging up new and niche podcasts that I maybe haven't been aware of before. And I have found those, a lot of them, honestly, through social media, because most podcast hosts are promoting their episodes and their guests and their podcasts online. And so if you just look for the search terms that you want, it will come up. And even on Instagram, you could do like hashtag romance podcast, for example, and you'll get results. And you go from there and make sure it's something current and credible and relevant to your client. Yeah.
Because the one thing I'm looking for selfishly on my side of the mic is how I get in on those lists, because I want my show to show up on those search tools that you have. Mm-hmm. So any suggestions you have as far as a host, how do we get our podcast onto those certain lists? Any suggestions at all?
So you can reach out to PR agencies or publicists and say, like, this is what I do. This is my podcast. If you have anyone relevant, we love that. It just makes our job easier. You're saving us time by coming to us with a search result instead of making us find you. So, and then also, obviously, every podcast has a specific topic. So make sure that you're clear on what you're looking for and what your podcast is about when you're promoting it. And I definitely encourage you to use hashtags. So you can do hashtag writing podcasts, hashtag how to podcast, hashtag whatever it is in all of your promotions. So it makes it easier on our end when we're searching that you'll come up in the results. I also think utilizing online forums is very helpful, like a relevant Facebook group, for example. You'll get a lot of eyeballs on you that way of your target audience.
And I think that's how we met as well. We talked about those find a guest, be a guest type Facebook group, and here we are. So it's exciting. When you go to a website for a podcast, anything that catches your eye that makes you kind of go, this looks good and this might not look as good. Is there anything that we can do in our website to make our website stand out to people like you? Because I want to get in front of people like you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you definitely want to have your most recent episodes. I'm always surprised by how many times I go to a landing page and then I have to click through multiple more clicks before I can even see your last couple of episodes, whether it's leading me towards Spotify or what have you. It's easier and quicker if you just highlight your last several episodes right on your website. And then I can understand right away if this is something that I should look into further or maybe wouldn't be a match. Because we're very time strapped. I can speak generally for publicists. So the easier you make it for us, the better. It's kind of obvious, but having very clear contact information. Once I decide I'd like to offer a guest for your podcast, I need a way to get in touch. If I don't have to jump through hoops, that's obviously preferable. And then I always think it's great if podcast hosts have social media sites connected and that they're active and live. So if you have the little Facebook square, I always click it and I want to see what you're posting and how you're promoting the guests, because that would be beneficial to my clients if I see you have X amount of followers, and that's going to be even more eyeballs on them once the episode airs.
Good. Okay. That's great. So I love the hashtags. That's really important for all of us. When you when your clients come back to you after being on a podcast, what kind of do you do any kind of follow-up conversation around their experience on a show and whether or not that's a show you're going to keep in your lineup for future suggestions to other authors? Do you have any kind of recap with your clients at all?
We do quick email exchanges usually because they're doing a lot of interviews and they're busy, and they let me know how it went and if they felt comfortable. With yours, I always get very positive feedback, which is why I keep feeding you my clients. They're always thrilled to be on your show. I've never heard one bad word, which is wonderful. And I rarely do, because we do a lot of research and some pretty heavy vetting before I would stick one of my clients in front of a camera or a microphone. So it would be rare that anyone would come back to me and say, I didn't like that, or that was uncomfortable. Usually they're happy and excited and asking me when it's going to air, which is always the follow-up question.
Has there been anything from your perspective that a podcaster can do better that you've heard back as a comment, without naming a podcast specifically, where maybe a podcaster just wasn't, maybe not promoting after the episode, or maybe the conversation wasn't that great or something? Was there anything that we can do better as podcast hosts from your perspective?
Sure. So one of the things that sometimes can catch my clients off guard is sometimes podcast hosts do not make it clear whether they're going to be recording in video or not. And that's never good. If you think you're going into an audio interview and then you find out that they have recorded you and then posted a video on YouTube, and you felt like you were in your professional attire or what have you. Nobody wants to be surprised that a video of them is going to show up online. So I think it's important for podcast hosts to be super clear whether it's going to be a video interview or solely audio interview ahead of time.
Yeah, that's a great point. I happened to a friend of mine. He's a professional speaker, and he's always dressed very nicely in a suit and tie, and he's got a look, right? And that's his look. And he went onto a podcast in a baseball cap and a t-shirt, and the host was like, don't worry, it's not video, no problem. So they did the recording, and a couple days later, he goes to YouTube, and lo and behold, there he is in all of his dressed down glory, and he was not impressed, impressed at all.
Right. That happens, unfortunately. And people don't mind if you're going to video them. You just have to say it in advance, give them a little heads up.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So you talk about getting authors on podcasts, but your services go beyond that as well. What other things do you do through your website?
Sure. So I help basically writers throughout the whole process, whether you need Amazon reviews, whether you need blurbs to put on the cover of your book, a book signing event in person. People like to write op-eds, guest posts, byline articles. I help them place those. I'll get them media interviews, whether it's with newspapers or on television or in magazines or online. I also do blog tours, which have become more popular, the virtual online book tours, whether it's through social media or solely blogs. So really, it's every aspect of the promotional part of launching your book.
Okay. Is there anything else in podcasting that you find is helpful for like guests coming on podcasts? I'm just thinking, like, is there any gaps that you're seeing, I guess, in podcasting that it'd be great if podcasts did a little bit more of this to support our authors? Is there anything that stands out to you at all?
Most hosts are pretty good about it because they want to be seen and elevate their own platforms. But like I said, I think growing a bigger social media following would be hugely beneficial instead of just looking at your numbers of listeners, because that means a lot on our end. Like I had mentioned before, to see that you have whatever it is, 1 million Instagram followers, that goes a long way in terms of building buzz and awareness, in addition to the Spotify listeners and things of that sort.
The one thing I know I struggled with early on for Living the Next Chapter, my podcast, was it's an interview-based podcast, and my first 10 guests were probably the hardest to get because I have no history with this show. I have no listener numbers. I'm brand new to podcasting, to being a host for an interview author podcast, and I'm out there trying to find people, and it was hard to get people to say, I'll take a chance on you. I don't know. You have no track record. I don't know if that's going to be a value of my time. It's getting easier. I'm over 300 episodes now. So it's getting to the point now where I'm getting a little bit more. I get to work with people like you, which is awesome. But in the early days, it's really hard. If you're, as a PR agency, you're looking at a podcast, it's relatively new. and the host is trying to get their podcast going, is there any kind of things that you kind of look at to give you the confirmation that this might be a good podcast for your guests to go on? Because I want those young podcasters starting out to get connected with somebody like you, because oh my gosh, it's so much easier. How do we start off a new podcast as an interview host and do a good job for our guests? Any little tips that you would say?
Well, you definitely need a couple episodes under your belt. So I hear what you're saying, that it's hard to get your first guest. So I would mine your acquaintances. So if your podcast is about writing, if you have a friend who has written a book, then that can be your first episode. Because for me, new doesn't necessarily mean bad, but I am going to listen to your 2 episodes if that's all you have. And if it sounds professional and well done, and the website looks professional and you're out there promoting it, then I'm happy to give a new podcaster a shot. The matches that work the best in that scenario for me are newer, in our example, authors with newer podcasters. Because if you're, for example, a self-published author who's never done an interview before and you're super nervous, it's actually great to put you, with a newer podcaster, because you're both kind of getting your feet wet and learning the ropes, and it's not as scary as opposed to me throwing you right in the deep end with like a national television interview, for example. So that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're just starting out. And I would, like I said, build up my first couple episodes from my own acquaintances. And then from there, I would reach out to, like I said, first timers, whether it's authors or whatever your niche is, and make those connections where you're just helping each other because you're both new.
Okay, so I have a question for you that I haven't found the answer to yet.
Okay.
And I've been asking people because I'm on this mission. When I have one of your amazing clients on my show and we do the interview, we're all done, we say goodbye. They might see an email from me in the next few weeks after like a wrap up, and I send them some artwork for their episode. But then there's like months of silence where I've had this great interaction with this author. They're so amazing. We have this bond because we spent time together, host and guest. I'm looking for a way to continue connecting with my guest long after having them on my show. And it's more than just having them back, but how I can serve them as a host after the fact. Because the one thing I noticed in social media and in podcasting is that somebody might come to my podcast today for the very first time and they have no idea about the 300 episodes behind me. They're here for the very first time on episode 301, and this is their first time listening. So to reshare and bring back past episodes, to kind of integrate with my social media and bring back an episode and tell everybody, hey, go check out this episode, it's really good. I'm trying to find a way to stay in touch with my guests long term and keep that relationship going. Do you have any tips for me and for other podcast hosts on how we can keep our relationship alive with these amazing guests that we get to interact with?
There's a couple of things off the top of my head. One is, like you said, follow up in a few months, offering them to come back on, asking them if they have a new project. For authors, they're usually already writing the sequel or something like that. And so you can set up a time to speak to them again, or to speak to them even before their next project, but just with a different angle or a different topic. Because some of my authors, they could talk about, for example, if it's a memoir, they can talk about their life story, but then in another episode, they could talk about the craft of writing and more of like a how-to practical interview. And so you can hit them up twice within the same kind of campaign for the book that they're promoting. But then also, again, I keep talking about social media, but it really is very effective. If you want to stay in touch with them, aside from when you first put out the episode, you can tag them in social media. You can take a quote from their episode later on and post that. Or you can say months later, this really was one of my favorites of the year from Jane Doe. Here it is again. Tag her, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. They're going to see that. They're going to appreciate that and likely reciprocate and be like, wow, Dave's really helping me out here, keeping on mentioning me and my book, things of that sort. So you can keep in touch with them virtually. And you don't necessarily have to keep doing the interviews. You can keep up with them via all your social channels and their social channels in that way.
Okay. One thing I've been suggesting to podcast hosts, if you live wherever you live in the world, there's probably something unique about where you live that people know of. So I live near Niagara Falls.
Oh, cool.
So we have this big hill, lots of water. People love to come here from all over the world. I just got 2 books from an author in Finland who was on my show, and she's never been here to Canada or seen Niagara Falls. But now I have her books. So behind me on my shelf are books from past guests. What I do is I take the books down to Niagara Falls and take pictures of her book at the falls and send it back to her without my branding, just her book. And she has the opportunity then to say, like the traveling gnome, where somebody steals your gnome and it travels the world and you send back pictures. Your book has now landed in Niagara Falls, and here you are around something so beautiful and highlighting your book in a beautiful place. So wherever you are, there's probably something special about where you live. Take those books that people give you, which is so kind of them to do, and do a little extra by taking them to that special spot and take some pictures of their book to help them promote their book, because they're not going to get that photo otherwise. So that's one of the little things that I do to stay in touch with my authors, is if they do send me a book, I'm grateful. It's not a requirement to be on my show, but when they do that, I want to show gratitude for that, because now I have not only a great friendship, but now I have a great book that I can then read myself and then share with others. So that's kind of how I do it.
I mean, that's a great idea. I love that. And in addition to just emailing you the photo to them, like I said, you can post it online and tag them and get a definite reaction and an appreciation in that way.
Yeah, I think it's all about real relationships with people. It's very transactional in podcasting, in social media, right? We post whatever, it's kind of this back for. I love when we put social back in social media. Mm-hmm. We get that interaction back and forth together. I think that's really important as well. So it's amazing. So again, I have your website up again in front of me. I love your website, by the way. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
And all of the pricing's right there. Everything's right there. You don't have any secrets. It's right
no.
Here's everything I can do for you and how I can help you. And like I said to you before we hit record, I know people who could definitely use your services. So we're going to be sending you some emails about that. So anything big coming up for you now? It's 2024. Any big plans for this year in your business?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've got books launching. I have one launching in a couple weeks. And I have a multi-city book tour that I'm working on. We've got a blog tour coming up. So yeah, a lot of exciting authors coming in. I have a couple that haven't signed the contract yet, so I can't talk about yet, but they're in the works. Some new clients coming in, but CK Publicity is doing well. I'm excited. I always love getting new authors in. It's fun for me. I like what I do.
It's amazing. Okay, so I'm a new author. I'm reaching out to you to help me. What kind of questions should I anticipate answering from you as we kind of do the onboarding and that initial conversation? Any questions that you would ask a new author looking to hire you as to represent them?
The most important thing is a pub date, and you'd be surprised how many people are unsure. They say, "Oh, I think it's coming out in May," but it's so important for me to know that information so that I can plan out your campaign and what I can do for you. It's very different how I would approach your book publicity if your book is launching next month as opposed to 6 months from now. It would be a completely different job for me. It's really important to pin down a pub date. And if you have no idea, that's fine. I've also helped authors talk them through it. We've done strategy sessions, and I help them pick their pub date strategically, the one that makes the most sense, that will allow them to gain the most publicity from the book launch. But you really want to have a firm date. It is important. A lot of people ask me, who cares? And I say, I do. It's more important than you realize. So if you don't have a pub date, it's okay, but then we need to work together to set one in stone. Because then I backtrack from there, all of my efforts.
I love it. Awesome. Kat, it's so great to have you on the podcast. And
Thank you.
Again, it's amazing because we've gone email for email back and forth. And now to see you on my screen is awesome. It's really great to meet you in person. Virtually, but it's exciting to work with you as a podcast host. Your people are amazing. You're doing such a great job, and it makes my job as a host so much easier to be able to work with a professional who knows what they're doing. So My encouragement to someone who is starting a podcast or has a author podcast, or you're looking for guests to hire someone or to be with somebody like Kat, it's great because you really do get vetted guests. You get the support, you get all the information and all the help that's behind the scenes. It makes it so much easier for us as well as hosts. So thank you again, Kat, for sending me so many great people. I always, when I see your email pop up in my inbox or my calendar link, I'm like, yes, it's like, I already know it's going to be great. There's already that expectation level. This is going to be another amazing guest. So again, Kat, before we go, promote your website again, and any closing thoughts you have for guests, for authors being a guest on a podcast, or for hosts of podcasts. Your wisdom is amazing, and I appreciate it. The website and any closing thoughts you have for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words. Yeah, in terms of advice, I would just say work together, the author and the podcast host, in terms of promotion. Anytime a podcast host can send graphics that can be used on social media is a huge win. It makes it easier on the guests' side to just have something pre-made that they can throw up there. It means they're definitely going to do it, and you're going to get help with your promotion. In terms of my website, again, it's ckpublicity.com, and I'm happy to help out any authors or writers who just aren't sure next steps in terms of book publicity. I have a variety of options. You can check it out. You just click the services tab, and then when you're ready, contact me, and I'm happy to chat.
Awesome. All the information in the show notes, everyone. I would love for you to go there, check it out. If you're an author looking for an amazing person who'll be in your corner and help you and promote you and be your support, Kat's the one, 100%. I would say that right away. And I would love for you to work with her, because then I'll see your email in my inbox, and that'll be fun. So, Kat, thank you so much for doing this. And again, send me more people. I love your authors. They're great.
I will. Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone. All the information's in the show notes. Please go check it out and let Kat know you heard about her here on the podcast. Kat, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter, and we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement, that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest, and what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf. Go to livingthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. And I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livingthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion, and thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.